One day I will see the rainbow. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. There's no need to worry for me. I'll be fine.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's the Step Up if you're new on this channel, and this is a channel where I share ideas across surviving abroad, international study tips, and also taking care of your 4C natural hair. So today is actually pretty exciting because I'm going to be doing a video requested by one of my subscribers. So Edmond Dance, he actually requested that I do a video on living cost as an Erasmus student in Denmark. If you don't already know my story, you're seeing my face for the first time. So I was once an Erasmus student, but now a graduate. I'm a Nigerian based in Denmark. So I'm going to be doing a breakdown based on my own experience while I was a student studying in Denmark. Today, I'm going to be touching upon 4 main expenses. The first is your residency permit. Of course, to live here in Denmark, even as a student, you need a residency permit. Also, I'll be talking about accommodation, whether you like to, rent a student dorm, or you want to stay in a shared apartment, or you want to live by yourself in a studio. I'm going to be telling you how much these different types of apartment cost. The third thing I'll be talking about today will be, food. Of course, you need to survive. So grocery shoppings and everything in between. And then I'll be talking about transportation, very, very key, because the way the transportation system here works is very different, at least from the different parts of Europe that I've visited. Denmark has a very unique transport system, and of course this has to also do with the expenses that goes into transportation. If you will find this content useful, please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, because that would go a long way to support my channel. And thank you so much for staying with me if you're already a subscriber on this channel. Without further ado, let's go straight into today's video. So number 1, residency permits. So because I'm a Nigerian, like I mentioned, so I'm not from the EU, I have to pay for a residency permit. I remember when I moved, I had to pay a fee of, I think, approximately 2,000. I think it was 1,900 DKK. I'll leave the conversion on the screen, but I had to pay 2,000 for my residency. So whether you're renewing your residency or you're applying for the first time, it's a standard fee. You have to pay 2,000 kroner. So this is just to make you informed so that you have enough money, because for me, I had to move from Austria to Denmark, and I had to make sure that I had enough money for paying for my residency before moving into Denmark. And just another tip with the residency, usually for your residency permit, once you apply online, you'll be required to show up in person 14 days after you've registered online to do like your biometrics. So it's always advisable that you apply for your residency when you're already in the country, in this case Denmark, so that you have enough time to actually prepare and show up in person within 14 days for your biometrics. So your biometrics would be like your fingerprints and everything that goes into identifying yourself. So I had to actually apply because I was in Austria, so I had to wait until I moved into Denmark before applying for my residency permit, so that I'll be able to show up within 14 days for my biometrics. So this is just a bonus. The second thing I'd like to talk about today is accommodation. Of course, as a student, you want a place that is conducive, that is safe, a place that it's easy for you to read and have your me time. So there are different options for accommodation here in Denmark, but sadly they're not cheap. Of course, you can get affordable accommodation as well. So based off from my experience, there's a system with Aalborg University where I studied. So the school would also hook you up with accommodations that are available in their portfolio. So I got my first accommodation as a student through my school, Aalborg University. I'll leave the description in the link below and also on the screen so that you can see the different links. But essentially, it's possible that your school has that kind of setup. You need to check in with the student service. And I remember it was not so easy to get an accommodation because there's something called the waiting list here in Denmark. You have to sign up for up to 2 years or 1.5 years if you're lucky on a waiting list if you want to stay in a student dorm, because the student dorms are actually limited and the number of students in Denmark are more than the accommodations available. So usually they have the system called a waiting list where you sign up. I mean, for us, we're not informed about this, so I did not sign up for any waiting list. But luckily, my school had this shared service with other accommodations that are dorms, and that was how they were able to hook us up, or some of us up, with a student dorm. This is one option. You can actually stay in a student dorm. A student dorm costs between the ranges of, if you're lucky, you get between the range of 3,000 DKK to about 4,500 DKK. So the 3,000 DKK student dorms you get typically are not really in the city center. So the one I got was somewhat in the suburb region. But the good thing about it is, because the transport system works fine here in Denmark, you can literally get to anywhere very easy and fast. There's the train, there's the bus, so it's easy for you to commute even though you do not stay in the city. So I got my first accommodation for 3,000 kroner, 3,100 actually, to be precise, and that was actually conducive for me because it was more or less like a room where I have my bathroom, my personal bathroom, but I had to share kitchen with other students. But I think it was okay for me, at least for starters, because it was relatively cheap, so that was sufficient for me. 3,000 kroner to be precise, and this 3,000 kroner, I stayed like 20 minutes away from the city center if you take the train. So this was also another student dorm that I got by signing up on the waiting list. So again, it's very advisable, if you're coming to Denmark, it's very advisable that you sign up on the waiting list so that you stand a better chance to get a better student dorm, preferably in the city, because that's where everything happens and that's where everything is. But I got this place and it was 20 minutes away from the city center, but it was also a good deal for me. The same setup, I had my room, I had my bathroom to myself, but I had to also share kitchen with other students. The second option you can actually get as well, if you're rich, you can get a studio apartment. But of course, studio apartment don't come easy. Again, it's still the same standard with whether it's a dorm or it's an apartment. It's in high demand, that's the word. It's in high demand, and so there isn't a lot of apartments that are available. You just have to know the right people, sign up to apartments list online to be able to find the right apartment. But if you can get a studio apartment between the range of, if you're lucky, 6,500 to about 9,000 in the city center. That is standard price for a studio apartment. Studio apartment, you have your room, you have your kitchen, you have your bathroom, meaning that you're not sharing anything with anybody, so you have your privacy, which of course that's like the standard. If you really, for me, if I really had enough money, I would prefer to do like a studio apartment, but of course I didn't have enough money, so I had to cut my coat according to my size. But yeah, that is another option you can get. The third option you can get is actually a shared apartment, and I think that this is very common here in Copenhagen. So you get a lot of places where you have maybe, for example, a living room where you have to share with other people, and then you have your own room, and then you share the rest of the apartment with others. So sharing the rest of the apartment would range from maybe living room, the bathroom, the kitchen, the terrace, for example, if there is one, or the balcony, but you have your own room. And in this kind of setup, if you're lucky, you get a shared apartment room for about 4,000, 3,500, ranging up until 6,500 or 7,000 kroner in some cases. I think personally, some of the shared apartments, their prices are very ridiculous, because how can you be in a shared apartment and you still pay up to 7,000 krona or 8,000 krona? Well, I think that this shared apartment, in most cases, the prices are set up by the people that are already living there, so they kind of set up the price based off of what they think is suitable for them. So this is one disadvantage of shared apartment. You tend to maybe spend so much if you don't really get a good deal. But of course, the advantage that comes with that is most of the shared apartment, they're in the city center, so you don't really have to pay too much for transportation, because you're literally close to everything, if you get what I mean. The third thing I want to share with you today is the transportation system. The transport system in Copenhagen is very different, at least very different from the different parts of Europe that I've been in. So transport system here works according to zones. So first, I'd like to break down the different types of transport system that you can possibly use in commuting. So you have the trains, you have the buses, you have the metro, and you also have shared bicycles, for example, if you want to rent a bike. So, or if you want to have a personal bike as well. So for the metro connections, it's typically in the city that you have metro connections. So if you're living in the city, you have a lot of metro connections that can connect you to different parts within the city. There's also the regional trains as well. So trains literally goes everywhere. So you have trains if you're living in the city, you have trains if you're living in suburb regions, you still have train connections, and it's very fast and smooth actually. Also, you have the buses. Buses also go everywhere. So if you're living in the suburb region or if you're living in the city center, you can literally take the bus anywhere. And then the third thing, which is very unique to Copenhagen, is bicycles. There's also the public rented bike or shared bikes. So these are electric bicycles that have GPS. So that's like very unique. So you can actually bike in Copenhagen. Is relatively safe. They have their own bike lanes and you see it around the city in blue color. So it's been created, or the city has been designed to also integrate biking. So this is actually a very good initiative and a good way to move around in the city or even outside the city. So for transportation, the cost, so there are 2 or 3 options. I'll do a breakdown. So the first one, or the most popular option, is the Riser card. So that's the travel card. So you can either travel between different zones. So Copenhagen, you travel by zones pretty much. And if the more zones you travel, the more expensive it is. So for example, if you're traveling between 2 zones, you pay maybe like 25 kroner. If you're traveling between 3 zones, you pay maybe more, like I don't know, 45 kroner. If you're traveling 4 zones, then you pay more, maybe like 52 kroner. So it depends mainly on the zones you travel. While I was a student, I was living in the suburb region the first months while studying in Denmark. So I usually travel to school between 4 zones. So the Resa card, you can purchase that in 7-Eleven or the stores around, or you can have it ordered online actually. If you have it ordered online, it's free. I got my Resa card later on when I left where I was staying in the suburb. So I decided to get a Resa card so that I can pay less. And all you just need to do is to activate it. So it's more or less like a pay as you go. So every time you travel, you load your card. And for the Resa card, they have the option for youth card for students. So the Resa card has another type, a type B card for students. It's called the ungdomskort. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this very well in Danish, but it's a youth card pretty much. So this applies if you're between the ages of 16 to 25 years old. You can actually apply for the youth card. It's 50 kroner, I think. And then once you have that, you get discounts on your travel using the youth card. I use the DSB app. This is also another option. I'll leave that in the screen. But with the DSB app, it gives you the opportunity to, buy a package, a subscription package for a month, and then you choose the number of zones that you want to travel within that month. So typically, because I was studying in the city and I was staying in the suburb region, I always travel 4 zones to get to my school. So I had to pick 4 zones, and then it costs 750 kroner a month. That is approximately 100 euros. So every month I had to leave aside 100 euros for transportation. You see, that's very crazy. So this goes into whether you want to stay in a cheap accommodation outside the city but pay so much in transportation, or you want to stay in an expensive accommodation in the city and then you don't really have to pay so much in transportation. So you have to weigh your options, what is better for you. Third option for traveling is your bicycles that I talked about. So bicycles are actually relatively cheap. If you're using a rented bicycle, you pay very cheap. You pay about, depending on the rental service, but it's not so expensive. And if you have your own bicycle, usually it's advised that you get your own bicycle because you're not paying anything. You're only paying, of course, for purchasing the bike. You can get a second-hand bicycle. It's cheap relatively, and then you can travel everywhere. But of course, if you're living in the suburb region, then this may not be realistic because you can't travel over 24 kilometers by cycling. That's like too much. So it depends on your option. Another thing people have adapted here is, so those that have bicycles and they want to pay less for transportation, what they do is they cover some of their journey by train, and then they take their bicycle into the train, which is free. You don't need to pay for doing that. And then if they need to cover the remaining miles, then they can cycle to their destination. This is one way, but the disadvantage is if you're taking a bus connection, then you cannot carry your bicycle on the bus. It's not allowed here in Denmark. It's allowed in Austria, but not here in Denmark. So you can carry your bicycle on the train or on the metro as well. So metro is also another system that you can travel. Well, for metro, if you're carrying your bicycle on the metro, then you have to pay for your bicycle too. But if you're carrying your bicycle on the train, then it's free. And the metro also works very well. The metro, it's more expensive actually if you're commuting, because I did the breakdown. So usually if I travel with the train, I pay like, between two zones, I pay like maybe 16 kroner or thereabout. But if I travel on the metro, I pay more, like 25 kroner. So the metro, it's very neat. So I think high maintenance, you have to pay more, I guess. So that's the difference between traveling using the train or using the metro. But I always advise, I mean, if you can go around with train, if you can still get to your destination with the train, I would advise that you take the train or the bus than the metro. But the metro is also a good way to move around. That is in terms of cost. It's more expensive to travel on the metro compared to the bus and the train. Okay, when it comes to food, I would advise that you patronize stores that are cheap, what I call cheap. So I'm talking about NATO, I'm talking about Rema. I mean, people think that Rema 1000 is expensive, but I did the comparison with NATO and Rema, and I think, in my opinion, that Rema is actually cheaper than NATO. Also IRMA, I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but yeah, I did a breakdown of when I was a student back in June. I just did a breakdown to see, okay, how much did I spend? And now taking into account that there was Corona, so most times I was always at home and I didn't really eat out because of course the restaurants are closed. So I did the breakdown of, okay, how much did I spend within a month? And I discovered that I spent, just for groceries, just for food, I spent approximately 600 kroner for just food. Usually this might sound cheap for some people and this might sound expensive. It depends on your spending actually. But for me, I always go for cheap ingredients. Of course, you know I'm cheap. So anything that I feel like is expensive, I take it out of my list and just go for what is cheap. What is the alternative to buying this or making this recipe? So I always go for cheap ingredient. Like if it's not necessary, I don't buy it. I only buy what is necessary at the stores that I need to cook. And I always advise people that if you can, it's better that you do your homemade meals. It's cheaper than eating out in a restaurant. Of course, once in a while you want to hang out with friends, you can eat out in the restaurants or order in, but I always advise and recommend that you eat in. It's cheaper as a student. When it comes to restaurants, you pay about, for a normal meal, you pay for like maybe 70 to 90 krona if it's cheap. This is excluding drinks, by the way. But if you're doing a homemade meal, you can spend less. Even though you paid that amount, you know that it's not just one-off. You can eat that meal that you've made like in three times or 2 times, depending on how much you made. So I always advise, if you can, it's always better and cheaper to make your food yourself. When it comes to eating at school, also my school practiced this system. It's food scale. I don't know, I thought that was not so, in my opinion, that was not so transparent, because when you have your food placed on a food scale, they're scaling not just the food but the plates. And the plates that they use in school or at the cafeteria, and it's quite heavy, and that's already weighing a lot. So I did not think that was a transparent system, but of course it's still relatively cheap to eat in the school cafeteria compared to a restaurant outside. So typically I would eat a meal portion that is healthy for maybe about 25 to 30 kroner. There's also options for vegetarians if you're a vegetarian. Bonus tip, if you're part of the Erasmus network, you can actually get discounts as a student in some cool, nice bars that are in partnership with Erasmus. This is of course what I did. The good thing about Copenhagen is that with just your credit card, you can literally move anywhere. You can leave your house with just your credit card, because if you're paying for anything, whether it's traveling, whether it's, you know, food, you can literally pay with your credit card. And yeah guys, it's a wrap. If you find this content useful, please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up, smash that subscribe button, comment down below, let me know what you'd like to see next, like the video that I just did. This was a request from someone that commented down below. But yeah, thank you so much if you stayed up until the end of this video, and of course please feel free to check out other videos here. I'm gonna leave it down here, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.